Good afternoon, everybody. It's Nick here, and today I'm looking at the brand new Cinemax show, Warrior! Okay, I probably can't do that. It's probably racist in some way. Anyway, it is basically a kung fu action movie based on Bruce Lee's original ideas. I mean, he pitched these to, I think it was Warner Brothers back in the 70s, and they claimed that they had already had this idea running alongside, so they actually chose somebody else, and that became Kung Fu, you know, sort of the guy roaming around the Western and solving problems. But they didn't use Bruce Lee because A, he was too Asian apparently, and B, the main reason they say is that his accent was just too heavy, which I can kind of believe. It took a while for him to sort of lose that Asian accent, Asian English accent. So anyway, what is this story about? Well, much like Banshee, we have a hero come overseas from China to, okay, not like Banshee, but Banshee came from out of town. This guy comes from out of town. He arrives in San Francisco. This is during the 1800s when they are bringing a lot of Chinese labor in. The Chinese labor is pushing out the existent Irish labor, and they are getting very upset about it, forming unions and basically being pretty violent to the Chinese to the point of actually murdering them too. So you have that happening. You have two tongs or meeting rooms or gatherings, kind of like gangs really. One of them is a traditional Chinese gang. They walk around with the long ponytails and the nice Chinese garb. Then on the other side you have what you might be familiar with if you watch something like Kung Fu Hustle, where they run around with the pickaxes, the hatchets. And they're wearing sort of suits, black suits, white linen, and in this they have a little red hanky tucked in their pocket. So these guys are they've carved out their own area of San Francisco. This tong doesn't go in there. They don't go in there. And then you've got the Irish trying to get them to sort of fight against each other. Stopping all of this is 3 or 4 police officers who are basically demoted or promoted to looking after Chinatown. And these guys are the most racist bastards you can imagine, except for one. And they don't like the job. They don't like the Chinese. They look at them as dogs and animals. But they've been put there by the mayor more for political reasons than for anything else, and more for, as I say, it's sort of demotion for one of the characters. So our hero, who is Andrew Koji, who plays Saham. It's a really weird name. To me, it's just not Chinese. It sounds very Eastern, Middle Eastern sort of thing. Anyway, so he arrives, gets into a bit of a spot of bother with the immigration officials, knocks the crap out of them actually. And luckily, watching over him or watching his back is the rather cool Wang Chao, played by Hoon Lee. He's kind of like a little finger, like from Game of Thrones, where he knows everything that's happening with each tong. People go to him like an intermediary sort of thing. And if anything happens, he knows it. He knows what's going on. He can get the weapons for you, etc., etc. So he pulls our hero aside, drags him to one of the tongs, and he ends up basically becoming sort of starting one of the tong wars because he's such a good fighter. So he kind of like pioneers and champions for them. He gets a big brand, and he basically is owned by them for life. Then we also have, at the same time, as I said, we mentioned the Irish, we also have a brothel, of course we do, which the Chinese, one of the Chinese ladies, Madame's, runs, and she also knows everything that's going on around the place, but she also uses the brothel as a sort of, I suppose, assassination planning place, gets her ladies to do work for her, other than just the usual ladies on the night kind of stuff. So we have that going as well. And we also have a bar, which is kind of the equivalent of that, but it's called Banshee, of all things. This, of course, as I said, this show is very much like Banshee. That's the biggest negativity, which is not a negative, it's a positive, but it does borrow a lot from Banshee. I mean, as I say, the guy from out of town, he kick ass. There's a local, basically mafia gang guy who believes he's actually helping the community. In this case, there's 2 of them. And yes, a lot of the elements are really, really borrowed from Banshee. And that is because, of course, Jonathan Trooper, who's executive producer, is one that, created Banshee. And with him is Justin Lin. And you can see that Justin Lin's there. He's the sort of the action choreography, martial arts. That being said, I mean, Trooper is brilliant. I mean, if you've seen Banshee, you'll notice some of the fight scenes in there. They are hectic and they are brilliantly choreographed. You get the same sort of thing in here. I don't think it's as violent, to be honest with you. It's certainly violent. You get axes in the head and stuff. But I mean, I don't think it's as violent as Banshee. Banshee was gritty, like sinewy, cracking and popping gritty. This is a little bit like that, but pulled back slightly. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it'll get worse later. But yeah, like I say, we've only seen the first 8, and I'm assuming that the last 2 episodes are going to get pretty bloody, just because of the narrative and the plot and where we sort of had to leave it, sadly. Really looking forward to watching the last 2 episodes. So while this madness is happening with the gangs, we also have these police officers who are brilliant. They are so good, these guys. Their acting is phenomenal. Every one of them has their own backstory. You kind of feel sorry for them at the same time as being like, these guys, they're corrupt, but you can kind of see why they're corrupt. It's the only way to live like it. So the parallels between them and the Chinese and the Irish, they're pretty obvious over there. Everyone's in it together. You've got the corrupt mayor who is helping out the senator, and the senator wants these I think it's a sort of reparation act or something like that, where they push out the Chinese and send them back. So he's a bit of an evil guy, kind of like what's happening in the world right now in certain places in the world. And that is what this is. It's very contemporary. If you look around the world, you see this whole immigration issue with people saying that they're stealing jobs, etc., etc. They're creating violence, and this is like that, but boiled up to 10. So you're not going to get much subtlety in that. It's not subtle. You literally have people screaming, "You slanty!" and I'm not going to finish that, but that kind of thing. And they call them dogs. They get murdered because they're Chinese, just because of the fact that they're Chinese. And so it's quite heavy like that. But at the same time, like I say, the storyline is quite great. Not quite great. It is awesome. The acting is great as well. The score is phenomenal. Really, really well thought out music scenes here. Sometimes the music being quite contemporary for now, and then jumping back into the music, I suppose, from China to even Ireland, depending on the situation and who's on the shot in the shot. So very well done. And the sets, oh my God, the sets are phenomenal. Really, really beautifully put together. Who owns HBO? But yeah, so it's really, really pretty to look at. The colours are very mute for most of the time. It's sort of browns, greys, get some whites in there too. But sometimes when they have like the Chinese New Year, things really pop off the screen. So most of the time it kind of feels like a Westerner just because of sepia in each shot. So yeah, very well done in that regard too. So the camera work, but from Justin Lin and Trooper, you're going to get some very good camera work and whatnot, lighting. So as I say, it's just going to come out. Today is the 4th of April. I think the first episode called, what's it called? The Itchy Onion. People who are fresh off the boat and are Chinese, they call them onions. And you'll find out why. I'm not going to ruin it for you. But that starts tomorrow. And it'll be really interesting to see whether it comes down to South Africa. And I say that not just being South African, but because the entire thing was filmed here. Obviously, post-production done overseas. But being filmed over here, you wouldn't think it. There's no landmarks that you'll go, oh, that's Cape Town. Except for the town hall. That you will recognize, which is very obviously the Cape Town town hall. But absolutely brilliant. I love the show. I binge-watched it in 1 day. 2 days, over the weekend, and I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. We've missed the last 2 episodes, obviously for spoiler purposes, and I think I might even push up to 8.5 once I know what happens at the end of this. I'm really hoping this is going to get a second season because it's just so much fun. It is, like I said, it's a sort of fusion of Game of Thrones with the with these different people coming together and fighting each other to Banshee, of course, as I mentioned, and it's just a whole lot of fun. If you don't mind, like I say, the rather 18 label, I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. At the moment, it's still to be determined, but it's pretty hectic stuff. And the fact that this is a Bruce Lee story, I think is quite not story obviously of Bruce Lee, but his own story, which his production company, or at least his wife's production company, whoever owns it right now, finally got greenlit, which I think is quite cool. At least he's finally got his own series, as it were. But beautiful starters. But also, the intro. Intro, absolutely brilliant. If you can imagine Iron Fist, that was quite a nice intro, certainly better than most of the series. But that done the way that they've done it in this, it's almost like these it is red and whites with kicking ass, and it is such a cool beginning. You'll watch it every single time. Not on the same level as HBO's Westworld, that is just beyond brilliant. But this with the colours and the painting and the calligraphy, absolutely stunning. 8 out of 10, go watch it and let me know what you guys think. Catch you later. Wow!